People cross paths with greatness every day and never know it. They stand beside history changers and security lines. They brush past quiet billionaires at coffee kiosks. And sometimes, they steal their seat on a plane. Heathrow's sister in chaos. New York's Terminal 7 buzzed like a living machine. Wheels rattled over tiles, boarding calls echoed overhead, and screens flickered with departures to cities all over the world. In the middle of it all sat a young black woman in an oversized black hoodie, gray joggers, and simple white sneakers. She looked like any tired traveler trying to survive another long-haul flight. Her name was Amara Cole. To strangers, she was just another economy-class-looking passenger killing time with a paperback. To the people who actually knew who she was something else entirely. The founder and CEO of Novalift Systems. The youngest black woman to become a self-made billionaire in the aviation technology sector. The architect behind a predictive flight safety AI that airlines were fighting over. But there were no logos on her clothes, no bodyguards, no flashy jewelry. Just a black leather backpack at her feet and a worn sci-fi novel in her hands. Her hair was braided back into neat cornrows, gold beads catching the light every time she turned a page. On her phone, muted on the seat beside her, a calendar reminder glowed. London, 7 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Final Sky Shield demo, €5 billion deal. If she nailed that call, Novalift would go from disruptive startup to essential global infrastructure. And the airline carrying her today, Global Air Connect Flight GA904, New York to London, wasn't just a client. They were the launch partner. Their entire next decade of safety and fuel strategy depended on her technology. She had chosen seat 1A in first class months ago, front row, window, minimum disturbance, specifically because the aircraft was equipped with one of the few SkyShield uplink domes already installed. At cruise, she would connect directly from that seat to regulators, investors, and airline executives across Europe. She had exactly one chance to show them what Novalift could really do. Final boarding call for Global Air Connect Flight 904, nonstop service to London Heathrow. All passengers, please proceed to Gate 26. Amara closed the book around her finger, stood up, and slipped it into her backpack. She felt the usual sensation she had come to recognize over the years as she approached the priority boarding lane. That subtle shift in the air when people noticed her skin, her clothes, her calmness, and decided she didn't quite fit where she was standing. A businessman ahead of her glanced over, did the quick head-to-toe scan, then checked the boarding sign, his brows twitching as if he wanted to tell her, "This line is for first class." He didn't speak, but the message hung between them anyway. The gate agent, a woman in her 40s with practiced airline neutrality, smiled professionally. "Boarding pass and passport, please." Amara handed them over without comment. The agent scanned, paused, and immediately straightened. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Cole. First class, seat 1A. We're honored to have you with us." Her eyes flickered with recognition. Not fan recognition. This wasn't movie star fame. It was the recognition of someone who had been briefed. Someone who'd been told, "If you ever see this name, be very, very careful." Amara's lips curved into a small, polite smile. "Thank you." The agent lowered her voice. "We hope everything is to your satisfaction today." "It will be," Amara said softly, "or it will be fixed." The agent swallowed, not quite sure how to respond to that, and let her pass. Amara stepped into the jet bridge, feeling the familiar vibration underfoot, the faint scent of jet fuel mixed with recirculated air. She always loved this moment, the thin space between earth and sky, between what people assumed about her and what she actually was. She had no idea that by the time this flight left the ground, the whole world of one entitled passenger was going to collapse, and an entire airline's culture would be forced to change. The first-class cabin of the wide-body jet looked like a luxury hotel in miniature. Muted lighting, private pods, champagne flutes already waiting on side tables. Soft music drifted through the air. Amara stepped inside, scanned the seat numbers, and moved toward the very front, 1A. It should have been simple. Find seat. Stow bag. Buckle in. Change the world at 37,000 feet. Instead, she stopped short. Seat 1A was already taken. A white woman in her late 50s lounged there as if she owned the aircraft. Perfectly styled blonde hair, diamond studs, pressed cream-colored blazer, and a handbag that screamed old money and older arrogance. She had one leg crossed over the other and was applying lipstick using the dark screen of the entertainment monitor as a mirror. Next to her, in 1B, the aisle seat, lay her designer tote and her coat, and a stack of glossy magazines spread like a territorial flag. Amara checked her boarding pass again, 1A, and then checked the small metal plate above the window. 1A. She stepped closer, keeping her voice calm. Excuse me. Sorry to bother you. I believe you're sitting in my seat. The woman paused mid-swipe and turned with an exaggerated slowness, looking at Amara like she'd just been interrupted by room service in the wrong hotel. I'm sorry, what? Her tone was all velvet and ice. My ticket is for 1A. Amara raised her boarding pass with a polite smile. That's this seat. The woman's gaze swept lazily from Amara's hoodie to her sneakers, then to her backpack. Her lips curled almost imperceptibly. Oh, sweetheart, she said, brushing it off with a little laugh. I always sit here. There must be some mix-up. They know my preferences. She flapped her hand vaguely toward the back of the cabin. I'm sure there's another seat for you. Maybe they upgraded you last minute. That happens. Amara's face remained neutral. I selected this seat months ago. It's on my reservation. Could you please check your boarding pass? The woman sighed loudly, the kind of sigh that's meant to tell the world that she's being deeply inconvenienced. She dug into her handbag, pulled out her ticket, glanced at it for half a second, and then waved it dismissively. It says 1B. But that's ridiculous. I need the window for my skin, the light is better. And frankly, she added, lowering her voice without lowering it enough, you'd probably be more comfortable somewhere else anyway. There it was. That soft, poisonous emphasis. You. Somewhere else. Amara's jaw didn't clench. Her shoulders didn't tense. She simply stood there, steady and impossibly calm. I'm comfortable exactly where my ticket says I should be, she replied. Which is 1A. The woman's eyes hardened. Do you know how many years I've flown with this airline? She snapped. I'm Diamond Elite. I practically live on these planes. People like me keep this company in the air. She looked Amara up and down again. I'm sure they can find you a perfectly nice seat. Maybe one row back. Or further. A young male flight attendant approached, his name tag reading Tyler. He wore the nervous smile of someone who had never been trained to stand firm against wealthy outrage. Ladies, he said, with professional brightness. Is everything okay here? Everything was fine. The woman cut in before Amara could speak. Until this young lady decided to harass me over a clerical error. She's insisting this is her seat. Tyler turned to Amara. Ma'am, may I see your boarding pass, please? She handed it over without a word. He scanned it with his tablet, checked the screen, and swallowed. Yes, you are assigned to 1A. He turned to the woman. And Mrs. Whitman, is it? You're assigned to 1B, just here. He gestured to the aisle seat, right next to her. Mrs. Whitman bristled. That must be wrong. I always sit by the window. I have a skin condition. I need the natural light, and she cut herself short and leaned toward Tyler, dropping her voice just enough to signal intimacy, but not so low that Amara couldn't hear. Look, you can see she's young. Just move her. Offer her something. People like her are usually thrilled with an upgrade. Tyler's eyes flickered with panic. He glanced around the cabin. There were still a few open first-class seats. It would be so easy to make this go away. Ma'am, he said to Amara, forcing a conciliatory smile. I completely understand this is your assigned seat. But would you be willing to take 4A instead? It's also a window seat. I can offer you complimentary champagne, extra amenities. No, Amara said, her voice low but absolute. Thank you, but no. I chose this seat for a reason. I paid for this seat. I'm in the right place. She is not. Tyler's smile faltered. He wasn't used to the quiet one, refusing to comply. I really don't want this to become a bigger issue, he whispered. We're trying to get everyone seated so we can depart on time. Mrs. Whitman seized on his discomfort like a shark scenting blood. You see, she said loudly. She's being unreasonable. She's making trouble. If she wanted to sit up here, she should have earned it like the rest of us. Not. What do you call it? Ride an upgrade voucher. Her words were coated in sugar and venom. Not one outright slur, but the meaning was loud enough to echo. Several nearby passengers turned to look. Some frowned. Most stayed silent. Trouble wasn't something people volunteered for. Amara's eyes locked on Tyler's. The only trouble, she said evenly, is that your airline has a seat assignment system and you're asking the person who followed the rules to step aside for the person who feels entitled to ignore them. Tyler flushed. Ma'am, please. Let's not escalate. A different voice cut through the air. Firm, female, and utterly done with the scene. What's going on up here? A senior flight attendant approached, older, sharper, with Monica, purser on her name tag. She listened as Tyler stumbled through an explanation. Mrs. Whitman interrupted him, playing the victim, insisting she was being harassed. Monica didn't look at the handbags or the jewelry. She looked at the boarding passes. Mrs. Whitman, she said, her tone brisk. Your ticket is for 1B. Miss Cole's is for 1A. We need you to move to your assigned seat. Mrs. Whitman's face flushed deep red. Are you serious? Do you know who I am? Monica's expression didn't change. What I know is that we can't depart until everyone is in the correct seat. Please move, ma'am. I will not, Mrs. Whitman snapped, voice rising. I'm not being shoved aside because you're scared of some complaint. The customer is always right. And the right customer is the one who has status. Look at her. She doesn't belong here, and we all know it. The air went still. Tyler shifted from one foot to the other. Monica's jaw tightened. Amara didn't move. Mrs. Whitman, Monica said slowly. If you refuse to comply with crew instructions, I'll have to call the captain. Mrs. Whitman scoffed. Do it. Maybe he understands how important I am. Monica lifted the interphone and spoke in code. Those few phrases that flight crews reserve for serious situations. Captain, this is the purser in first. We have a passenger refusing to comply with seating instructions. I need your presence. Now the whole cabin knew. This wasn't just a customer complaint anymore. This was escalating into a safety and authority issue. And Mrs. Whitman had no idea that the quiet black woman she'd just tried to push out of her seat had the power to ground not just this flight, but her entire future in the air. The cockpit door opened with a soft click, and Captain Elena Ruiz stepped into first class. She wore the crisp navy uniform of Global Air Connect, stripes on her shoulders, dark hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun. Her presence changed the energy instantly. The scattered murmurs died away. Good afternoon, she said evenly. I'm Captain Ruiz. I understand there's a problem. Mrs. Whitman's demeanor shifted from aggressive to wounded in an instant. Thank goodness you're here, she gushed. Your staff is treating me horribly. I'm a loyal Diamond Elite member, and this girl, she flicked her eyes at Amara, is trying to steal my seat. Let's start with the basics, Captain Ruiz replied. Boarding passes, please. She scanned both, checked her tablet, looked again. Ms. Cole, she said, you are indeed assigned to 1A. Mrs. Whitman, your ticket is for 1B. My crew's instructions were correct. Mrs. Whitman's smile dropped. That's absurd. I always sit by the window. Always. Can't you just move her? There are other seats. I have an important meeting. I've spent more money with this airline than she's probably seen in her life. A few passengers shifted uncomfortably at the sheer arrogance of that line. Captain Ruiz's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Status does not override a valid ticket. We have policies for a reason. You need to move to your assigned seat, ma'am, or we cannot depart. Mrs. Whitman crossed her arms like a stubborn child. No, I'm not being pushed around so some random young woman can play pretend in first class. Upgrade her. Buy someone else out. Do your job. This is my job, Captain Ruiz replied, patience thinning. And my job includes enforcing crew instructions. I'm asking you one last time. Please sit in 1B. Absolutely not, Mrs. Whitman said, chin lifting. I want to speak to someone above you. A supervisor. Someone from corporate. You people forget who pays your salaries. Amara finally spoke again. Her voice was soft, but it carried. Captain, she said, may I say something for the record? Captain Ruiz turned to her. Go ahead. I was calmly trying to take the seat I paid for. Mrs. Whitman refused to move and made several comments implying I don't belong in this cabin, including suggesting I should be grateful for whatever I'm given. Your junior flight attendant tried to solve the conflict by asking me to move, even though I'm the passenger with the correct seat assignment. He offered me champagne to compensate for giving up my seat to someone who openly disrespected me. Tyler flinched. His cheeks went crimson. Amara continued in that same quiet tone. I'm aware that Global Air Connect's employee conduct manual states that crew members must enforce seat assignments without discrimination, and that if there's aggressive behavior, They must support the harassed passenger, not pressure them into moving. I believe that Section 4.3, Anti-Harassment and Equality, Subsection 2. Captain Ruiz blinked. That wasn't the kind of detail regular passengers knew. You're familiar with our internal policies? She asked, studying Amara more carefully now. I should be, Amara replied, lips curving. My company helped write the training module updates last year, when one of your competitors had a similar incident. I make it a habit to know how my partners treat their people. There was that word again. Partners. Mrs. Whitman rolled her eyes. Oh, please. She probably watched some viral video and memorized a few phrases. This is ridiculous. You can't seriously be taking her side over mine. People like her are always yelling discrimination the second they don't get what they want. The cabin temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Amara didn't even look at her. She kept her gaze on the captain, and her voice didn't change. With respect, Captain, she said, I'm not yelling. I'm standing where my ticket says I should stand. She's the one refusing to comply with your crew's instructions. Captain Ruiz's decision snapped into place. Mrs. Whitman, she said, tone suddenly sharp as a blade. This is no longer about preference. You are refusing to follow crew directions, which is a safety and security issue. If you do not move to seat 1B immediately, I will have you removed from this aircraft. You wouldn't dare, Mrs. Whitman hissed. I'll have your job. I'll have all of your jobs. I'll write to corporate, to the board, to... Amara tilted her head slightly, as if deciding something. That might be difficult, she murmured, reaching into her backpack. Considering who you're threatening to complain about. She pulled out her phone and unlocked it. One single contact sat pinned at the top of her favorites with a name most people in aviation would recognize instantly. J. Hale, Global Air Connect Group. Captain, she said calmly. At this point, this behavior has gone beyond a simple seat dispute. I'm not comfortable staying silent any longer. May I make a quick call before we push back? The captain's eyes widened. Is that Jonathan Hale? She asked quietly, recognizing the name of the airline group's CEO. Yes, Amara said simply. He asked me to let him know if anything interfered with my ability to deliver tonight's Sky Shield demonstration on one of his aircraft. Mrs. Whitman barked a disbelieving laugh. You expect us to believe that? You're not calling the CEO of anything. This is some ridiculous bluff. People like you. Amara hit call and put the phone on speaker. It rang once. Amara? You should be airborne. The voice on the other end was smooth, older, and unmistakably powerful. Is there a problem? The cabin went silent. Tyler's mouth fell open. Monica's eyes went round. Captain Ruiz straightened instinctively. There are moments when arrogance hits a wall it never saw coming. Mrs. Whitman had just slammed into hers at 30,000 feet while still on the ground. Hi, Jonathan, Amara said, as casually as if she were calling a friend about running late to brunch. Sorry to interrupt your evening. I'm on GA 904. And we seem to have a small issue in first class. On the phone, Jonathan Hale, CEO of Global Air Connect Group, shifted instantly into crisis mode. What kind of issue? He asked, voice sharpening. Technical? Security? Cultural? Amara replied. Your diamond passenger in 1B, Mrs. Deborah Whitman, has refused to leave my seat. She's made several remarks about people like me not belonging here, and your junior flight attendant tried to move me instead of enforcing the rules. Captain Ruiz is here now and handling it correctly, but I thought you'd want to know this is happening on one of our equipped aircraft right before the Sky Shield demo. There was a long, cold silence. Put the captain on, Jonathan said. Amara held the phone out. Captain Ruiz took it like it was made of glass. Jonathan, this is Elena Ruiz, she said. Everything Ms. Cole described is accurate. I've instructed the passenger to move. She refused. I was about to have her removed from the aircraft. You're doing exactly what you should, he replied. Elena, listen carefully. You have my full authority. Mrs. Whitman is to be deplaned immediately. Her diamond status is revoked as of this moment. I will have legal add her to our permanent no-fly list and circulate that to our alliance partners. She will never board another Global Air Connect aircraft again. Captain Ruiz swallowed. Understood. And Elena, Jonathan added, his voice hardening even more. Ground the aircraft. The captain blinked. Ground the entire flight. Yes, he repeated. Ground it. Not just a small delay. I want a full compliance and security sweep. Interview your crew. Document everything. I want the message crystal clear. Anyone who harasses a passenger, especially one of our key partners, will cost us more than just a complaint email. I'll take the schedule disruption. We cannot afford this kind of rot in our culture. Am I clear? Yes, sir, she said. Crystal, put Amara back on. She handed the phone to Amara, who accepted it with the same steady hand she'd had since the conversation started. Amara, Jonathan said, his voice softening. I am so sorry. This is unacceptable. I'll deal with it personally. You'll have a written apology from the board by morning. I don't need an apology on paper, Amara replied. I need structural change. Use this as a case study. Train them better. The tech I build keeps your planes safe. The people you train have to keep your culture safe. You have my word, he said. I'll see you on the call once you're airborne. The line clicked off. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Captain Ruiz straightened, shoulders squared with renewed purpose. She looked at Mrs. Whitman, who suddenly looked much smaller in her cream blazer. Mrs. Whitman, she said, her voice cool and formal. You are being removed from this flight for refusal to comply with crew instructions and for creating a hostile environment. Please gather your belongings. You can't do that. Deborah gasped. You can't ban me. Do you know how many miles I have? Do you know? I do, Captain Ruiz said. And none of it matters more than safety and dignity on this aircraft. This is no longer up for discussion. The jet bridge reattached with a shudder. Moments later, 2 airport security officers and a ground operations manager stepped on board. Conversations throughout the cabin died mid-sentence as passengers realized something serious was happening. The manager, David's son, spoke quietly to the captain, then turned to Mrs. Whitman. Mrs. Whitman, he said, tablet in hand. As of 1842 local time, your elite status has been revoked. You are being removed from this flight and placed on Global Air Connect's internal no-fly list. Further action regarding alliance partners and legal consequences will be communicated to you in writing. Please come with us. Her face crumpled. You can't do this. I have meetings. I have investments. You're overreacting over some girl who. The way she said girl made several people wince. Amara didn't look up. She had pulled out her book again, as if the scene unfolding 2 feet away had nothing to do with her. That calm disinterest hit harder than any smug smile could have. The officers gave Mrs. Whitman a choice: walk or be escorted. She walked, but every step down that aisle was a walk of shame she would never forget. First class watched in stony silence. In business, people craned their necks. In economy, whispered rumors about a problem in first spread like wildfire. When the door closed behind her, the captain picked up the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced, this is your captain. Due to a serious compliance matter in the forward cabin, we are temporarily grounding this aircraft for a full safety and behavior review. Please remain seated. Airport security personnel may come through the cabin as part of this process. We appreciate your patience. A ripple of frustration traveled through the plane. Missed connections, delayed plans, but none of them knew how close they'd just come to something worse. A message that cruelty and entitlement could win if they were loud enough. While Mrs. Whitman was escorted to a small, sterile office in the terminal and informed of the full consequences of her behavior, Amara stayed exactly where she was. She didn't revel in the karma. She didn't need to. The point had been made. The flight and the airline would not move forward until respect did. An hour later, after statements were taken and reports filed, clearance finally came. The jet bridge rolled away. The engine spooled up, low and powerful. The aircraft taxied past rows of waiting jets, cleared to skip the line thanks to a rare time-critical designation from air traffic control. In seat 1A, Amara had already transformed from inconvenienced passenger back into what she really was, a strategist, an architect of the future. Her laptop hummed to life, connecting via cable to the aircraft's integrated system. The seatback screen in front of her flickered, then transformed from an airline menu into a custom interface filled with shifting maps, data streams, and pulsing icons. SkyShield. The technology everyone wanted to see. The reason she had to be airborne now. Monica approached quietly, placing a chilled bottle of water and a glass on Amara's side table. Ms. Cole, she said softly, is there anything we can do to make you more comfortable before you begin? Just one thing. Amara replied, eyes never leaving the data unfolding across the screen. No interruptions in this row. No meal service, No announcements, unless it's an emergency. I'll let you know when we're done. Consider this area a silent zone, Monica said immediately. We'll inform the rest of the crew. Tyler hovered a short distance away, shame obvious in his posture. Ms. Cole, he said quietly. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I thought I was de-escalating. I didn't realize. He trailed off, struggling. Amara finally looked at him. You thought the easiest solution was the right one, she replied. It usually is. Until it isn't. He swallowed. I won't make that mistake again. She studied him for a second, then nodded once. Good. Learn from it. That's the point. At 10,000 feet, the seatbelt sign chimed off. A soft green light appeared on her laptop. Uplink locked, Sky Shield dome active. On the screen, 12 windows opened, each showing the face of a different person. Regulators from the European Flight Safety Council, executives from multiple airlines, and a panel of stone-faced investors representing a syndicate with 5 billion euros on the line. Ms. Cole, said a stern-looking man with silver hair and small glasses. We were beginning to think you'd run into technical trouble. We had a brief, human error delay, Amara replied smoothly. But we're airborne now. Sky Shield is fully online, operating in real time from this aircraft. Thank you all for waiting. For the next 90 minutes, the cabin around her faded away. She walked them through live turbulence mapping over the North Atlantic, overlaying traditional forecasts over Sky Shield's predictive models. She showed how her AI wove together dozens of data sources, temperature gradients, jet stream behavior, satellite readings, to forecast microbursts that conventional systems didn't even see. As you can see, she said, adjusting a slider, standard avionics show mild turbulence in this region in about 40 minutes. Sky Shield, however, identifies a 96% chance of a dangerous wind shear event in 34 minutes along our current path. On screen, the investors leaned in. And what does the system do with that information? One airline CEO asked. It reroutes in real time, Amara said. With a few keystrokes, she simulated adjustments on their own flight. By shifting our flight path just 3 degrees north, we avoid the risk zone entirely. Fuel consumption? She tapped another key. A separate graph popped up with a downward curve. Reduced by roughly 400 kilograms. Safer passengers, lower costs, fewer delays. That's the Sky Shield promise. A skeptical German banker raised his eyebrows. Predictions can be wrong, Ms. Cole. If your system overreacts or underreacts, airlines pay for it. Amara didn't flinch. Any system can be wrong, she said. The question is, what does it learn from? Sky Shield doesn't just predict. It adapts. Every flight fed into it makes the next flight smarter. And Global Air Connect has already committed to being the living proof of that. She brought up a slide showing signed letters of intent. They've agreed to retrofit their entire long-haul fleet at their own cost because the early data has been that compelling. They're not gambling on us. They're partnering with us. There was a murmur of impressed voices through the speakers. By the end of the call, the same silver-haired regulator who had sounded skeptical at the start now looked almost excited. Ms. Cole, he said, the council will grant provisional certification for a fleet-wide pilot program. And our syndicate, added the German banker with a small, reluctant smile, is prepared to authorize the full 5 billion euros for rollout, contingent on final legal review. We believe Sky Shield will redefine global aviation safety. The corners of Amara's mouth lifted, just a little. Not the wild grin of someone who'd gotten lucky. The quiet satisfaction of someone who had expected to win because she knew exactly how much work she'd put in. Thank you, she said. You won't regret this. When the call ended, she finally let herself lean back against the seat, exhaling a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The plane hummed around her, peaceful now, flying through air that Sky Shield had already measured, analyzed, and made safer. A few minutes later, Captain Ruiz stepped out of the cockpit and approached 1A. I just received a message from Jonathan, she said, a smile breaking through her professional composure. He says the word from Europe is historic. Congratulations, Ms. Cole. Thank you, Captain, Amara replied. And thank you for doing the right thing earlier. That took backbone. Not everyone in your position would have chosen the harder path. Ruiz shook her head. It shouldn't be the harder path. But, you're right. Some of us still hesitate when we shouldn't. She hesitated, then asked, Can I ask you something? With your resources, You could fly private jets only. You could avoid commercial flights entirely. Security details, no seat problems, no rude passengers. Why do this to yourself? Amara looked out at the dark sky, stars scattered like distant cities. My father was an aircraft mechanic, she said quietly. He worked on old jets in a hangar that always smelled like oil and metal. He used to tell me that every bolt matters. Every person on the plane matters. Not just the ones in the front. She turned back, eyes soft but steady. If I disappear into private terminals and gated lounges, I lose touch with what I'm trying to fix. Flying commercial lets me see the system from the inside. The good, the bad, the ugly. Today was ugly. But it also showed me a pressure point that needs to change. Junior crew who think keeping the wealthy passenger happy matters more than fair treatment. Ruiz nodded slowly. We'll change it, she promised. I'll start with my own crews. Jonathan will handle the rest. I know, Amara said. That's why I stayed. Dawn spilled over the horizon in streaks of gold and pink as the aircraft descended toward London. The clouds glowed beneath them like a sleeping ocean. By the time the wheels kissed the runway at Heathrow, a few things had already changed. In a quiet office back in New York, Mrs. Deborah Whitman sat pale-faced across from two lawyers and a representative from Global Air Connect's Customer Relations Department. She'd been walked through the airline's code of conduct line by line, shown the reports from the crew, and informed of the financial penalties attached to the delay she'd helped cause. She protested. She cried. She insisted she wasn't racist, that everyone had misunderstood her, that she'd just been having a bad day. The policies and the recordings didn't care about her self-image. They cared about behavior. And her behavior had consequences. She walked out of that office without her status, without her precious miles, and with an entire lifestyle suddenly made much, much harder. Instant karma doesn't always look like a dramatic explosion. Sometimes it looks like losing the things you took for granted because of how you treated someone you thought had no power. Back on the ground in London, Global Air Connect made sure Amara's arrival was the polar opposite of her boarding experience in New York. Instead of a crowded gate, the aircraft rolled to a private stand. A sleek black car waited on the tarmac. No photographers, no red carpet, just quiet, efficient respect. Monica and Tyler stood by the door as she prepared to disembark. Ms. Cole, Monica said, it has been a privilege serving you today. And I wanted you to know, our base has already scheduled new training modules. Your name is on the memo. Good, Amara said with a small smile. Make them worth my time. Tyler swallowed. I'll be in the first class, he said. I'm going to learn how to do better. That's all I ever ask, she replied. Growth. Captain Ruiz shook Amara's hand at the aircraft door. I hope we have the honor of flying you again, she said. You will, Amara answered. And next time, maybe the drama will just be in the movies you show. They laughed softly. As Amara stepped down the stairs into the cool London morning, she looked back once at the aircraft. A metal giant, humming with electricity, sky shield systems quietly spinning. She had boarded as a girl in a hoodie that no one took seriously. She was leaving as the woman whose technology would protect millions of people she'd never meet. This is where the real lesson lives. It's not just in the satisfying image of Mrs. Whitman being walked off a plane, makeup streaked and confidence shattered. It's not only in the pleasure of watching an arrogant person discover they picked the absolute wrong stranger to disrespect. The deeper truth is simpler and harder. You never really know who you're talking to. You don't know what they've built, what they carry, who they can call, or how much power they hold behind that quiet smile. A black woman in a hoodie, reading a paperback and minding her business, turned out to be the architect of the very system keeping that aircraft safe, and a key partner to the CEO, the important passenger tried to threaten by name. Mrs. Whitman looked at skin color, clothes, and age. She saw nobody. Reality saw a billionaire, a genius, and a decision-maker whose opinion actually mattered. And that's the heart of stories like this. They remind us that respect should never be a reward for status. It should be the starting point, the default, the way you treat everyone, whether they're in seat 1A, 32F, or quietly wiping down the tray table before you even sit. Disrespect and prejudice will always carry a cost, sooner or later. Sometimes that cost is as small as a stranger deciding not to help you. Sometimes it's as big as losing your privileges, your reputation, and the comfort you thought you'd earned forever. On the other side of that equation is another truth. standing your ground calmly, refusing to shrink, and knowing your worth can shift an entire system, not just a single flight. So the next time you step onto a plane, or into a line, or past a stranger in a hoodie who doesn't look like your idea of important, remember Amara Cole. Remember that the quiet ones might own the sky you're flying through. Remember that power doesn't always announce itself with gold watches and loud voices. And remember that the person you're underestimating might be the one with the power to decide what happens next. If this story touched you, if you believe respect should never depend on skin color, status, or seat number, share it with someone who needs the reminder. And keep watching for more stories where karma moves fast, justice hits hard, and the people the world underestimates refuse to stay small.